when I was in-house and with clients, talking to leaders, understanding what is important to them, what is the data that's important to them as it relates to people and culture. As we go through and we're doing our qualitative and quantitative research, we've got methodologies and procedures that we can dissect and understand the experience. And then we are visualizing it based on what we're hearing from people.
Welcome to the All in Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify to stay tuned for our weekly episodes. I'm your host, Lydia, and joining us this week is Shannon Smedstad of exaqueo. Good to have you with us, Shannon.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Lydia.
So tell us about your journey in the employer branding space, Shannon. What are some key insights you've observed in this space recently?
Sure. So my journey, I've been in recruitment, employer brands, and employee communications for over 25 years. Majority of my career was spent in-house for organizations like Geico, which is one of the largest insurance companies in the United States, where I built their first ever employer brand. In 2016, I moved from in-house as a practitioner to consulting. And over the past 8+ years, I've worked with numerous clients around the world on understanding, building, designing their employer brand, as well as activating it. So interesting, some insights that I've observed recently. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot is, what is employer brand, right? I've been in the space since 2008, so a long time. But there's still a lot of noise or chatter or misunderstandings about what employer brand really is. And
what are some common misunderstandings about employer branding?
That it is just something that talent acquisition does.
Right.
Or it's just this execution of storytelling or photos, or that it's just an outward facing recruitment marketing. And employer brand is often used almost interchangeably with EVP or employer value proposition or employee value proposition or recruitment marketing. And when I think about employer brand, at its very core, it's the promise an organization makes about the type of employment experience they're going to offer someone. It's the promise that we make to our people. And then employee and candidate experiences have to deliver on that over and over and over again. And so employer brand isn't just something that talent acquisition or recruitment does. It really is more of a people and culture imperative. And it's something that should be felt and seen and experienced across the organization.
And very organically just moving in the organization and then taking it outwards so that a candidate who sees it might be inspired to join a company. Is that right?
Employer brands should be built from the inside out. Yeah. We have to understand our people. And then when we're sharing it externally, that is to attract people who will thrive inside the unique promise that we offer.
When you evaluate a company's employer brand across the whole employee life cycle, right? Employment life cycle. So what are some key touch points that you look at?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we're looking at understanding an employer brand, we always start by first talking with employees or looking externally with the talent market. So the early touch points are first around understanding. Do people even know that the organization exists? So we work with clients that are huge, where people would know them globally, but we also work with organizations that don't have that brand recognition. And so we want to understand how people first learn about them. So we might look at social media. We might look at their career site. We might go to news websites to see how are people finding out. And we ask individuals, how do you search for jobs? How did you first learn about the opportunity here? So we don't make assumptions that we know the touch points. We ask individuals how they're learning. How did they become aware? What made them interested? Who are they talking to that may have influenced them as well?
Right.
And then once someone is hired and they're onboarded, we'll work with our clients to understand, how are they onboarding? What are the platforms? How are you communicating the employment experience to your employees? What is your intranet? What are your email communications? Do you have a referral program? Do you
Mm.
have an internal career site? And so we look at all of the touch points really from hire to retire when somebody is
Mm.
thinking about transitioning outside of the organization, or they might be retiring from that company. So
So
it's very comprehensive.
right. Yes, indeed. It's a whole long cycle that you look at, and it never ends, I suppose.
It no, I mean,
Mm.
we've got clients where people leave and come back. So you've
Right.
got boomerang, and you
Boomerang.
want to understand why did they boomerang? How did
Mm.
what engage them? Some people will retire and then they decide, actually, I want to come back and work a few hours, or I might go work at a different company. And so the life cycle is, yeah, pretty fluid, pretty
Mm.
continuous.
Yeah. And when you communicate this value to the stakeholders in business, I mean, how do you story tell that data, and how do you communicate, or how do you visualize the impact on a business and its business overall goals?
Actually, when I was in-house and with clients,
Mm.
talking to leaders, understanding what is important to them, what is the data that's important to them as it relates to people and culture. As we go through and we're doing our qualitative and quantitative research, we've got methodologies and procedures that we can dissect and understand the experience. And then we are visualizing it based on what we're hearing from people. What are we learning about the work environment? What are we learning about the people that are there? What are we learning about the culture? And then we do use data storytelling. I work with my insights team to bring that data to life, to tell the story and be able to socialize that with leadership to get their buy-in.
Mm.
And then we take them on that journey to use the data, the authentic, unbiased research, to help then articulate what their employer brand and help them define and shape it.
Mm. And that would also then point towards the action steps that they would have to take internally as well.
So yes, if we're working with a client that wants to, some clients will come to us that they want to do the workforce research
Mm.
and they want to build the employer brand strategy. And then we can, if a client wants, we can help them to launch and activate that strategy. And so from the research, though, that's where we learn which touch points to focus on,
Mm.
what touch points are going to have the greatest impact, that have the most influence or the most frequent use. And we can help build and design, launch, and activation and ongoing brand activation plans for
Mm.
clients.
Now, how do you identify disconnects? You mentioned the brand promise and the experience having to be aligned. So, how do you identify disconnects between the brand promise and the actual experience?
Yeah, I think everything always starts with the conversation and the research for us. I do a lot of focus groups
Mm.
and interviews. So I've spent actually this week doing quite a few leadership interviews. And then I've also been doing employee focus groups. And in those conversations, we start to ask about, tell me about this particular part of the culture. How do you want to show up? We might get some general assumptions from leaders or our main points of contact. And then in the focus groups or in surveys, we can test things.
Mm.
So for an example, if an organization says part of our brand is we care about our people, well, we can go to the focus groups and say, do you feel as though the organization cares about you? In a survey, do you feel as though your manager or your teams, do you feel a sense of care? Why or why not? And we
Mm.
can dig into that. And then we can come back to leaders and say, yes, you're promising that and it's authentically lived. Or we might come back and say, actually, that's how you want to show up, but it's not being authentically experienced by your employees. And we may need to address that.
Mm. So, Shannon, what elements do you think make the biggest impact on candidate engagement?
Candidate engagement. So in that early stage, when someone's first kind of looking for opportunities, I think the career sites, an organization's career site, that really is the largest, most visible expression of your employer brand. That's where we are showing what the culture is like. We're highlighting videos. We're recognizing our people and showing photos, and we can clearly articulate what it's like to work here. So that career site, whether it's a one-page scrolling or it's a multi-page with a lot of content in there, I think that's got a really big impact to be able to tell your story, help you own your narrative, but it's also going to either attract the people who are going to thrive inside your organization, or people who won't will opt out. And so I think that the career site is really a place to kind of focus and bring that story to life.
Now, when it comes to automation and using technology, right? So how do companies, or how should companies balance automation and that human touch in the whole candidate experience as they discover the company through their careers page or social media or wherever?
Yeah. So I was a recruiter for many years. I was a desk recruiter. I had requisitions, and this was a long time ago, right before we even had like AI and all of these other things. And that high touch, that conversation, that relationship that the recruiter, the hiring manager is building with the person, if we can give our recruiters more time to do that and automate more of the tactical, the high volume sort of logistics and admin work, that's where I would focus automation. So if we know that scheduling takes a lot of time, how do we empower and enable our recruiters through a scheduling platform or technology so that we can take that time away from them, automate it so that they've got time to have more meaningful conversations? If we know that our candidates have the same questions over and over and over again, instead of fielding emails or fielding phone calls that are answering the same questions, maybe that's the use case for a chatbot on the career site. So I think there's, when we can take the admin and the tactical away and automate it, that's a great use of time so that our recruiters can spend that time again building that relationship, having the conversations, working with their hiring managers to be more of an advisor, advising candidates. That's kind of where my head goes in terms of balancing the high tech and high touch.
How do you partner with internal stakeholders to amplify that employer brand message?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different stakeholders.
Right.
So I think figuring out your stakeholder audiences. So one group that comes to mind would be executives. How do we get them on board? Or, how do we get them on board so everyone is singing from the same song sheet and we're all aligned of this is how our organization is going to show up for our people? And so part of that might be road shows, socialization, having conversations at that executive level. And then there's this group where we need to train and provide them with tools and resources, information. Our recruiters are great internal stakeholders that need to be able to bring that employer brand to life for our candidates, right? So how are we thinking about the training and arming them with information and tools in their toolbox to deliver on that? And then other ways, kind of more tactical ways as an employer brand professional leader team, are we creating toolkits and brand guides and creating an asset library where people can sort of self-service and get those brand assets so that they're not creating things on their own or going rogue, where we're giving them the information and tools to be able to do their day-to-day jobs too.
Now, in terms of missed opportunities when it comes to employer branding or even company onboarding programs, that very early stage is critical, obviously. So, what are some common missed opportunities that you might have seen in over the course of these years in company onboarding programs?
Onboarding is a really interesting part of the employment life cycle, right? So you've gone from job seeker candidate. Now you're still kind of new with the company. You're trying to figure it out. And you're also making a decision of like, did I join the right place? Did I, what I learned externally or what I my recruiter, is that actually what I'm experiencing now, right? And so one of the biggest missed opportunities when we dig into the employee experience around onboarding is one, people aren't getting onboarding or they're not getting an onboarding experience consistently. I'll go back to the care example. If we are an organization that says part of our employer brand pillars, one of them is we care. But then I've hired someone and they've come into the office and it's their first day and their manager goes, I didn't even know you were showing up today. I didn't know this was your first day. Or they show up and IT goes, yeah, your computer's not set up for you yet. You're going to have to wait another week. Or people do know that you're coming, but they don't check in on you, or they just put you in front of a computer and say, here's all your paperwork and all of the things you need to go fill out. We'll see you later. Right? Like that experience isn't delivering on the brand promise. And so when we are either not onboarding, not consistently onboarding, or we're not training our people leaders and our teams how to onboard so that it aligns with the brand, I think those are really big missed opportunities.
So, Shannon, you've had all these years of looking into employer branding and also hands-on experience being a recruiter. So, what advice would you give someone who is starting out in the space today?
I think be curious. You don't have to have all of the answers. Be a connector. Have conversations, find people across the organization, have a conversation with them, find out why did they join? Why do they stay at the company? Be really well networked within your organization. Be well networked outside, like learn from the community. There are a lot of people on LinkedIn. There's a Facebook group called the Employer Brand Forum with over 2,000 people in that group talking about employer brand. There are communities and places where you can go for information. So stay curious, learn, stay connected, and think beyond social media. What we do in employer brand is very strategic. It can influence whether or not someone applies. It influences your company's reputation. It can influence your consumer brand. It's not just taking photos and posting it on Instagram. So think beyond social.
Thank you, Shannon, for these insights and especially for your time today. So for those listening in who might want to learn a little bit more about employer branding or just want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, Lydia, thank you for having me and inviting me. I appreciate it. And if anyone's interested in connecting, I'm on LinkedIn, Shannon Smedstad.
Thank you, Shannon. And we have been in conversation with Shannon Smedstad from exaqueo. Thank you for joining us. And remember to subscribe to stay tuned for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment.